The last individual Aiden Rivers anticipated encountering in a serene family eatery was the woman who had disappeared from his life 3 years prior, especially not at a table accompanied by 3 young boys who all possessed his eyes, his hair, and his features. With just a single glance, all his preconceived notions about his past and future started to come undone. Aiden Rivers was not the sort of man who found himself in the wrong location. Each moment of his day was meticulously planned, overseen, and refined by a group of aides who understood the importance of sticking to the script. However, that afternoon, his driver mistakenly took a wrong exit off the freeway because of a sudden traffic reroute. Instead of reaching a prestigious dinner meeting at an upscale hotel downtown, Aiden ended up outside a quaint, hidden Italian restaurant that seemed to have remained unchanged for at least 20 years. He was poised to depart, yet an unseen force held him back. Perhaps it was the flickering sign in the window, perhaps the aroma of garlic bread drifting through the air, or perhaps, though he'd never confess it, the burden of fatigue he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge in years. He instructed the driver to remain and entered alone. The eatery buzzed with warmth and chatter, a cozy family establishment adorned with eclectic tablecloths, candles flickering low, and the joyful sounds of children echoing throughout the space. He selected a spot by the window, took out his phone, and intended to respond to a handful of emails before venturing back out. The ambience didn't quite suit him. It was excessively vibrant. Excessively chaotic. Yet, there was an element that caused him to hesitate. As he typed away, a sudden burst of giggling erupted from behind him, catching him off guard. He instinctively raised his gaze, his eyes sweeping across the room until they settled on a table positioned near the center. It was at that moment he caught sight of her. Crimson. He needed a moment to absorb it. She had aged a bit, but there was no mistaking her essence. The same rich, dark hair, now gathered into a relaxed braid, the same fluid motions, the way she inclined her head while absorbing another's words. And then he noticed what was around her, 3 little boys, each with dark brown hair and strikingly bright blue eyes. One attempted to maintain a precarious balance of a breadstick atop his nose. One more was engaged in a creative endeavor with a crayon. The third was speaking at such a rapid pace that she found it difficult to follow along. Aiden's heart plummeted to the ground. He observed, captivated, as one of the boys glanced up and chuckled. And it was the sound of his laughter. His precise laughter. The very one his mother would highlight during his childhood. His breath hitched in his throat as he leaned in a bit, narrowing his eyes, attempting to persuade himself that this wasn't the unmistakable reality before him. Indeed, it was. He could perceive it in the contours of their expressions. Within the confines of their jaws. In their gaze, reflections of his essence. These were no ordinary children. They belonged to him. The impact was so profound that it muted all other thoughts within him. All the fury he'd once harbored for her, all the lingering questions, the manner in which she had vanished from his life 3 years prior without a word, it all surged back, but now it was intertwined with something much more intense. Incredulity. And an emotion teetering on the edge of sorrow. Scarlett had yet to lay eyes on him. She assisted one of the boys in slicing a meatball, her demeanor gentle and understanding, blissfully oblivious to the turmoil unfolding mere feet away. He was frozen in place. Struggled for air. He was in disbelief as he saw the woman he had once envisioned a life with, now sitting across the room, enveloped in a reality that had evidently unfolded without his presence. In that instant, Aiden Rivers, the CEO, the billionaire, the untouchable, experienced an emotion he hadn't encountered in years. Helpless. Aiden remained motionless, his heartbeat echoing in his ears, while a torrent of thoughts clashed and crumbled within his mind. He gazed at Scarlett and the 3 boys with a bewildered fascination, as if his mind was lagging behind the reality his eyes had already grasped. For a man who thrived on absolutes, on numbers and control and certainty, the scene before him shattered something deep within the core of his existence. They resembled him. Each one of them. Identical dark hair, striking blue eyes, and the same nuanced expressions that he saw reflected in his own gaze. It was an undeniable truth. These were not merely children, they were his sons. Yet, she had kept it from him all along. He observed Scarlett as she delicately wiped one boy's mouth with a napkin, while gently admonishing another for attempting to crawl beneath the table. She appeared fatigued, yet not defeated. She possessed a subtle resilience, a quality he recalled fondly. The kind that had simultaneously captivated and repelled him in those days. He attempted to bridge the gap between the woman he now observed and the memory of the one who had silently departed from his life 3 years prior, leaving no explanation in her wake. She had vanished without a trace. On a sunny afternoon, they found themselves on his balcony, laughter filling the air as they shared takeout and tossed around absurd baby names for a future they playfully envisioned. In the blink of an eye, she vanished. No note. There is no farewell. Only quietude. He had sought her out. Engaged the services of private investigators. Manipulated threads. Placed calls. Her apartment stood desolate, the phone silent, and the bank accounts locked away. It felt as though she had completely disappeared from existence. It had shattered a part of him, a part that was delicate, optimistic, and deeply human. Following that, he immersed himself in his tasks. He expanded the business, achieved his first 100 million, acquired a penthouse, and crafted a brand so formidable that no one would dare inquire about the past. Yet, deep down, he always found himself pondering her fate. At that moment, clarity washed over him. She had not merely departed. She had brought his children along with her. His impulse was to march over, seek explanations, elevate his tone. Yet, an unseen force restrained him. Perhaps it was the manner in which one of the boys extended his hand toward her, prompting her to grasp it instinctively. Perhaps it was the effortless way she maneuvered through their turmoil. Perhaps it was the peculiar, foreign sensation blossoming in his chest, the burden of time that had slipped away. At last, as though aware of the weight of his gaze, she pivoted her head and caught sight of him. They exchanged a gaze that held unspoken words. As their eyes locked, time itself appeared to pause in that space. Her body tightened immediately. Her eyes grew large with surprise. For a fleeting moment, she resembled someone who had just encountered a specter. Her lips parted as if she were about to speak, yet silence enveloped her. He rose gradually. Her gaze trailed after him as he approached her table. At first, the boys were oblivious to his presence, engrossed as they were in their spirited battle over crayons. Yet Scarlett remained still. Held my breath. He halted a short distance ahead. Crimson. Her name tumbled from his lips with the weight of a boulder. Weighty. Authentic. The noise caused her to recoil, albeit just a bit. Aiden, she murmured. Her voice had a unique quality. Still gentle, yet now intertwined with weariness and an additional weight, remorse. He gazed at the boys. They remained oblivious to the events that were taking shape around them. Yet Aiden found himself unable to look away from them. He gestured with a hint of nuance. Here it is. She gave a slight nod. Only the truth. Without a doubt. Indeed. Every ounce of air escaped him. The reality was evident all along. Inarguable. I believe it's time for us to have a conversation, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Scarlett looked down at the boys, then turned her gaze back to him. Her shoulders squared as if preparing for a collision. Indeed, she murmured softly. It would be wise to consider that. Scarlett emerged into the open, her movements deliberate and measured, as if each step bore a newfound significance now that her secret was shared with another. Aiden trailed behind, his mind a whirlwind, thoughts echoing loudly and unrestrained in the stillness that enveloped them. The restaurant door closed softly, cutting off the cheerful sounds and cozy atmosphere of the families within. The air outside had a distinct crispness to it. Weighty. So genuine that it felt like a struggle to catch my breath. They lingered at the brink of the sidewalk, concealed from the gaze of the restaurant's windows. Scarlett wrapped her arms firmly around herself, her posture rigid, chin lifted just enough to convey a defiance that hinted at an impending struggle, one she understood was futile yet felt compelled to face. Aidan, however, remained silent at first. He merely gazed at her. In her visage, her gaze, the very ones he once etched in his mind when life became overwhelmingly intricate. She appeared more mature. Not in a negative sense, but rather more down-to-earth. Yet, there was a spark in her eyes that had not existed previously. A profound melancholy. Or perhaps merely years of endurance. He overlooked the questions that were right in front of him. Not at this moment. The reality was painfully bare, achingly vulnerable. He began with something gentler, despite the lingering heat in his throat. Why didn't you share that with me? Scarlett blinked, her eyelids fluttering in a deliberate, measured manner. She expressed it was due to her overwhelming fear. About you. From your perspective. Everything was moving so quickly when I discovered the news. He tightened his jaw, battling the surge of anger that threatened to overwhelm him. What, precisely, is causing the fear? I would prefer not to have them. No, she replied hastily. I had a feeling you would. I was certain you would show up, take charge, and completely transform your life if necessary. That was the source of my greatest fear. That took him by surprise. So, you departed because you believed I would be overly concerned. Scarlett let out a breath. I departed because I was unsure how to endure being engulfed by you and your existence. I was aware of the outcome that awaited us. Captivating titles. Photographic devices. Agreements. Discussions. They would be scrutinized closely as they grew, and I just couldn't bring myself to do that to them. Or perhaps to you. You were on the brink of something monumental, Aidan. I observed your ascent, swift and impressive, and I wished not to be the burden that hindered your progress. He shook his head slowly, attempting to take it all in. You were never a burden. You were the one genuine aspect of my existence that felt real. You didn't even allow me the opportunity to decide. Her expression faltered, the corners of her mouth tightening. I never intended to be a weight on your shoulders. My intention was to safeguard them. And perhaps, indeed, perhaps I sought to shield myself as well. He strode once, then pivoted to face her, his gaze intense. You shielded them by preventing their father from reaching them. I shielded them from turning into a narrative, she retorted, her tone escalating. From being traded by tabloids. From being exploited by individuals who are solely focused on your business. You really believe I haven't reflected on my actions each day for the past 3 years? A prolonged hush ensued. Neither of them averted their gaze. The silence enveloped them, a stillness born from the intimacy of shared histories, now marred by the unfamiliarity of their evolving selves. At last, Aidan's voice took on a gentler tone. There's no need for you to explain your actions, Scarlett. Not at this moment. However, there is one thing I must understand. She lingered, tension coiling in her shoulders. Are they aware of my identity? She took a deep breath. They are aware of their father's presence. An admirable individual. Someone I hesitated to introduce to their world until I felt confident they were prepared as well. Aidan gave a slow nod. His eyes held a depth of pain, yet beneath it flickered a spark of determination. He spoke softly, I'm here now. And I'm here to stay. Scarlett remained silent, yet a subtle change flickered across her expression. A glimmer of skepticism, perhaps tinged with optimism. She shifted her gaze, peering through the window at the table where the boys remained, blissfully ignorant that the very foundation of their existence was on the verge of transformation. As she glanced back at him, her voice came out as little more than a breath. I'm unsure about how to open up to you, Aidan. Let me help you work this out, he said. And for the first time since she'd turned her back on him, she stood her ground. The following morning, Aiden found himself unable to concentrate on anything at all. Amidst the relentless buzz of meeting reminders and a mountain of unanswered emails, his assistant's gentle knock for the board call went unnoticed, as he chose to remain in his own world, untouched by the chaos around him. His mind lingered beyond that quaint eatery, positioned on the pavement opposite Scarlet, ensnared in the stillness that ensued after the revelation. For a man who made choices in an instant, who brokered billion-dollar agreements before the sun rose, he now found himself ensnared in uncertainty, unsure of how to proceed with even the next move. He found himself lost in a maze of uncertainty, unsure of the rules that once guided him. He was a father. 3 young lads. His offspring. And he had overlooked it all, their initial steps, first utterances, and milestone birthdays. Everything vanished, hidden away in years that slipped through his fingers. The idea gnawed at him, leaving a void that filled him with dread. Not due to a sense of guilt, but because he came to understand the depth of his desire for something he had never envisioned before. He had a deeper desire to connect with them. He was eager to understand them. To be a part of their world in a manner that transcended wealth, heritage, or reputation. By early afternoon, he found himself back in his car, stationed a block away from Scarlett's unassuming apartment building. It wasn't in a less desirable location, yet it was evident she had opted for a life of simplicity, privacy, and safety. He had kept his arrival a secret from her. A part of him understood that she might choose not to open the door, yet the longing to see them again was undeniable. Even from afar. As he watched her emerge with the boys snugly wrapped in their light jackets, he felt a sudden catch in his breath. They formed a circle, a delightful disarray, voices overlapping in excitement, gesturing at the birds, the leaves, the vast sky above. Scarlett noticed him right away. She appeared unfazed. She paused for a moment, then approached him, her steps measured and intentional. The young ones trailed behind her, 2 pulling at her arms while the 3rd fell back, captivated by a stick he had discovered. "We're heading to the park," she announced as she approached him. Her voice carried a calmness that was far from icy. "If you'd like, you can join us for a walk." He nodded, struggling to contain the wave of appreciation that swelled within him. "I would appreciate that." Initially, they strolled side by side, enveloped in an uncomfortable quiet. The young lads dashed forward, playfully pursuing one another. Aiden observed them as if witnessing an enchanting spectacle come to life. Each motion they executed seemed almost otherworldly to him. He had lost out on so much. In the end, one of the boys, the tiniest among them, stumbled and fell. Aiden surged ahead as Scarlett began to move. He knelt down, carefully inspecting the boy's hands for any scrapes. "Hey," Aiden murmured gently, wiping away the dirt. "Are you all right, my friend?" The young lad gazed up at him, his eyes sparkling with wonder. "I'm not a friend," he remarked with a sulky expression. "My name is Liam." Aiden stood still, caught in the moment. Scarlett offered a subtle smile from the shadows. She confirmed that it's Liam. "Jake is the one wearing red. And Sam is the one who always tunes out." Aiden sensed a change deep within his chest. "Hi, Liam," he repeated, his voice gentler this time. I am your father." The young lad inclined his head thoughtfully. "Is that so?" He gave a slight nod. "Indeed. Truly." Liam observed him intently for a brief moment, then suddenly, he encircled Aiden's neck with his small arms. It was unexpected. It was spontaneous. It was merely a fleeting instant, a natural response of youth. And it unraveled him. Aiden remained crouched in that spot long after Liam had dashed forward. Scarlett stood beside him, her expression a mystery, yet her arms had unfolded. Neither of them uttered a word. There was no necessity for her to do so. He sensed it in the quiet that enveloped them, a new beginning unfolding. Upon returning to the apartment, she extended an invitation for him to come upstairs. Not for the sake of dialogue, nor for understanding, but because the boys were eager to unveil their superhero wall, a delightful jumble of drawings, stickers, and crayon mayhem affixed to their bedroom. He stepped inside, eager to soak in every moment, every nuance, their voices, their habits, the effortless way they embraced her. In the heart of their universe, surrounded by toys strewn at his feet and the sound of laughter resonating from the hallway, Aiden came to a profound realization that was both frightening and wondrous. He longed to be more than just a guest in their lives. He wished to remain. Aiden started appearing daily, always with an invitation in hand. He reached out to Scarlett first, consistently inquiring, never presuming. With each simple yes or brief, courteous response, she subtly widened the gap just a bit more. The boys accepted his unexpected arrival without hesitation. Children embraced certainty in a way that adults often struggle to understand. They welcomed him as they welcomed all things in their world, with an open curiosity and a sincerity that made Aiden feel as though he was rediscovering life from the very beginning. He discovered that Liam had a passion for dinosaurs, that Sam could recite the names of every planet in the solar system, and that Jake possessed a reserved nature but came alive when someone truly engaged with him. Initially, they referred to him as Aiden, a name that pierced him more than he allowed others to see. He chose not to correct them. He preferred to let things unfold naturally. One afternoon, after assisting Sam in constructing a rocket ship from cardboard boxes in the living room, Jake settled beside him, leaned in, and gently asked, "Are you going to be my dad now?" The inquiry struck him with more force than any surprise attack in the conference room ever could. He gazed into Jake's earnest blue eyes and responded in the only manner possible. "If that is your desire." Jake nodded in silence, yet later that evening, the three boys began referring to him as Dad. Without any formalities. No cautionary note. Merely a transition, as straightforward and deep as the flipping of a leaf. Scarlett observed everything in silence. She maintained her distance, not devoid of warmth, but rather cautious. For years, she had meticulously constructed barriers around herself and her children, fortifications that shielded them from a world she had once feared could bring about their ruin. Now that the world had entered her living room, crafting peanut butter sandwiches and mending broken toy trucks with duct tape and unwavering resolve. The upcoming weeks unfolded into a subtle metamorphosis that neither of them had anticipated. Aiden began to appear in the boys' lives consistently, not as a disturbance or upheaval, but as a reliable presence. Scarlett, ever vigilant, maintained her defenses initially. She provided only what was essential, and Aiden refrained from pressing further. He understood that she was poised, anticipating whether he would vanish once more, if his existence was merely another act, another fleeting spark from a man who resided in a realm constructed on dominance and separation. Yet this time, he found himself without a way out. He arrived on Sundays for outings in the park. He brought art supplies and immersed himself in finger painting sessions that resulted in his $1,000 shoes being adorned with glitter and glue. He assisted in constructing blanket forts in the living room and swiftly discovered that Sam had a strong aversion to peas, Jake had a passion for dinosaurs, and Liam demanded to be referred to as Captain Lightning at least once each day. He faced no inquiries. They welcomed him effortlessly, as if he had always been a part of them, as though they had been anticipating his arrival all along. That acceptance shattered him in the most subtle yet profound manner. Scarlett observed everything with a watchful gaze. She had never encountered him in this manner before. The man she recalled from their history was refined, composed, and somewhat aloof even in his warmth. This portrayal, this figure on the floor tying shoelaces, crafting bedtime tales, lingering in the quiet after they drifted off, was something altogether different. She was at a loss for how to handle that. Every aspect of her that had toughened to endure now seemed laid bare. Not due to any demands he made, but rather because he made none at all. One evening, after the boys had finally drifted off to sleep, Scarlett entered the kitchen to discover Aiden quietly scrubbing the dishes. Without a single question or utterance, he simply rolled up his sleeves and began to tidy up. Seeing him in that unfamiliar setting, yet somehow exuding a sense of belonging, took her by surprise. "You don't need to do that," she said, leaning against the doorway. He glanced back, a subtle half-smile playing on his lips. I understand. However, I have the desire to. With her arms crossed, she observed him intently for a moment. You consistently excelled at pursuing your desires. He shut off the faucet, taking his time to dry his hands before turning to face her completely. Not necessarily. I excelled at fulfilling what I believed I should desire. There exists a distinction. She took her time before replying. Though she remained on high alert, a warmth began to bloom within her, despite her efforts to resist it. I'm uncertain about placing my trust in this. Any of it. I understand, he replied softly. And I'm not expecting you to place your trust in me right away. Simply allow me to exist in this space. Allow me to demonstrate. Her gaze fell to the ground. You overlooked it all. Their initial utterances, their inaugural strides, celebrations of birth, bouts of illness, outbursts of frustration. You overlooked everything. He gave a slight nod. I'm aware. And that time is lost to me forever. Yet, I find myself present at this moment. And if you allow me, I won't overlook anything again. The stillness enveloped them, yet it carried warmth. It was heavy with unspoken words, a vibrant energy thrumming beneath the surface. She yearned to trust him. Desired to welcome him again. Yet the fear of the unknown gripped her heart. To love him once more would mean risking not just her own heart, but the hearts of 3 others as well. Aiden moved ahead, maintaining a respectful distance, ensuring his voice carried clearly without any physical contact. I have changed since you were last here. Perhaps you have also changed in ways you didn't expect. Perhaps that's perfectly fine. She lifted her gaze, locking eyes with him. They lacked any semblance of performance. Lack of drive. There is no plan in place. Only honesty. I need time, she said at last. You can have it all, he responded. With that, she gave a subtle nod. It was not a vow. It was not about forgiveness. Yet, it marked the initial genuine stride toward something they both believed had slipped away. Something delicate, yet deserving of an attempt. As the days transitioned into weeks, a fresh cadence started to emerge. It was imperfect, unpredictable, yet it held authenticity. Aiden integrated into their daily routines, not through grand gestures or bold proclamations, but through subtle, intentional actions. He began showing up early to assist in preparing the boys for school and lingered long enough to share bedtime stories, even when his job required him to focus on other matters. He made no attempts to win their favor. He refrained from inundating them with presents or ostentatious diversions. He appeared time and again, embodying a steadfast presence, as though each moment offered him an opportunity to reclaim fragments of the time that had slipped away. Scarlett observed everything with a wary heart. She longed to trust that the man meticulously folding tiny socks on her couch and constructing Lego castles in the living room was the same Aiden she had once adored, yet transformed in all the right ways. Still, the fear lingered within her, never quite fading away. For 3 long years, she navigated every tantrum, every doctor visit, and every impossible decision all on her own. It had forged her resilience, yet it had also constructed barriers so towering that she sometimes struggled to discern whether they were shielding her or secluding her. One evening, as autumn settled in and the air grew crisp, Scarlett sat on the porch steps, a blanket draped over her shoulders, observing the boys as they chased fireflies in the dimming light. Aiden settled next to her, his elbows propped on his knees, the sleeves of his dress shirt casually rolled up, embodying a sense of quiet ease and a domesticity that had once felt unfamiliar to him. They speak of you constantly now, she remarked after a prolonged pause. Even in your absence. He gazed at her, his face a mask of mystery. What are their words? She offered a gentle smile. Liam thinks your voice resembles that of Batman. Jake believes you have the ability to solve any problem. Sam inquired whether you're familiar with flying a plane, stating, quote, he's affluent and affluent individuals engage in such activities. Aiden chuckled, yet there was a depth of feeling beneath the surface. "They are truly remarkable." "Indeed, they are," she remarked. "And they belong to me. Each breath, each scar, every part of them. I may not have achieved perfection, but I poured my heart and soul into it." He nodded, his expression grave. "I understand. I always had complete faith in that. Even in my moments of anger, even when the reasons for your departure eluded me. I understood that you were acting in accordance with your convictions." Scarlett's eyes shimmered softly in the dim glow. "I remain uncertain whether it was. I simply understood that I couldn't bring them up in your environment. Perhaps, I was simply unaware of how to proceed." Aiden straightened his posture, his voice steady yet resolute. "Let's create something fresh. Not my own. Not for you. Ours. A place where they can flourish without having to discard their true selves." She gazed at him intently, her fingers gripping the edges of her blanket with increasing tension. "I prefer not to bring them up with someone who may leave when challenges arise." He said, "I turn my back on everything but you. The sole regret I carry is the loss of what we once shared. And now, those individuals. Me. This. I refuse to turn my back on this. This isn't the moment." What he said was the most exposed and raw expression she'd ever encountered. And it shattered something within her. As the night deepened, with the boys nestled in their dreams and the house enveloped in stillness, she presented him with a neatly folded piece of paper. Upon it lay the boys' birth certificates. His name was absent from the list. Up until this point, it had not been. "I'm prepared for them to discover the truth about their father," she murmured. "In accordance with the law. Completely. Beyond mere narratives." Aiden stared at the paper for an extended moment, burdened by the significance of its implications. This transcended mere parenthood. The theme revolved around the concept of forgiveness. On the subject of trust. Reflecting on the experience of being welcomed into a realm that had previously been entirely inaccessible. He glanced over his shoulder at her, his tone gentle yet unwavering. "Thanks a lot." Scarlett nodded, and for the first time, her eyes reflected a newfound certainty. They were in the process of creating something new. Not beginning anew, as what existed before had vanished. Yet what awaited them was an unexpected opportunity, something neither had envisioned they would encounter again. Every difficult discussion, every mark left behind, every quiet evening was worth it. The legal process unfolded at a pace that Aiden found unexpectedly sluggish, yet he chose to remain silent about it. Each encounter with the lawyer, every inked signature, every thorough background check, all seemed like progress towards something tangible, something that couldn't be snatched away from him again. He absorbed each moment with a profound sense of respect, as if the documentation finally aligned with the deep truth he sensed within himself. He was their father, not merely in memory or biology, but in his active presence, in the choices he made, in every morning spent helping them dress and every night dedicated to reading until they gently fell asleep. Scarlett observed the change in silence, her mind racing to find the right words to define the shift occurring between them. They had not rekindled their relationship, at least not in any formal sense. There was neither a kiss nor any grand romantic declarations. Aiden found himself in her home nearly every day. He was aware of the location of the cereal, which boy required his blanket to be warmed in the dryer before bedtime, and which one continued to wake up troubled by nightmares. He meticulously folded laundry while she managed emails, discovered the art of crafting pancakes adorned with smiley faces, and even took the time to braid Scarlett's hair amidst the morning frenzy when one of the boys innocently inquired, "Why doesn't mommy get a turn too?" As the sun dipped below the horizon, the boys were nestled in their beds, and an unusual stillness enveloped the home. Aiden found himself on the porch once more, a notebook resting open in his lap. Scarlett stepped outside, cradling 2 steaming mugs of tea. She silently offered him one, their unspoken connection lingering in the air. He accepted it, taken aback by the kindness, and looked at her with a weary yet appreciative gaze. "What is that?" she inquired, gesturing toward the notebook. He paused momentarily before responding. Titles. Titles. Regarding the trust fund I am establishing. It's not solely for them. For those who share their experience. Children nurtured by resilient mothers who faced every challenge independently. Scarlett remained silent initially. She took a delicate sip of her tea, her gaze drifting to the serene street beyond. I never wanted your money, she said eventually, her voice barely above a whisper. Indeed, he remarked. That's the reason I wish to offer it. She glanced at him then, and a silence enveloped them, one rich with significance yet lacking closure. She remained uncertain about how to navigate all of it, with his newfound presence, his gentleness, his transformation. She longed to trust that this was not just a fleeting moment, that it wasn't merely a reaction born from guilt. Yet, a profound voice within her cautioned her to tread carefully. What brings you here, Aiden? She inquired abruptly. Are the kids the only ones affected? He took his time before responding. He shut the notebook, placed it down gently, and turned to meet her gaze fully. He replied with a firm no. It all began with them. However, it extends beyond just them. It's you as well. Scarlett breathed out gently, her heart racing with a sensation that was both nostalgic and strange. I'm not sure I can bear the thought of losing you once more, she confessed. If I allow this to escalate and it crumbles, the impact won't be limited to just myself. It will cause them pain as well. He stated that he wasn't requesting a leap from you. Simply to accompany me. And if I am unable to, then I shall continue my journey regardless. Regardless of the title, the label, or any other designation. I will remain present. This is precisely where I was meant to be from the very beginning. Her throat constricted. He had no intention of winning her over. He made no effort to convince her. He was simply speaking the truth. That evening, she chose not to tell him to go. And when he lingered, dozing on the couch, cocooned in one of the boys' superhero blankets, it wasn't out of necessity, nor was it a matter of insistence. It was as if, gradually and softly, he was transforming into a sense of belonging. The arrival of winter was gentle that year, ushering in early twilight and serene mornings cloaked in frost. The boys had reached an age where they could sense the shift in the atmosphere, where the thrill of donning coats and gloves mingled with the anticipation of snowfall. Scarlett observed them with heightened attention, noting how they rushed into Aiden's embrace the instant he entered, how they leaned against him as if they had always anticipated his presence. At times, it still surprised her, the effortless way it appeared, the ease of it all. Yet, the journey to that point was anything but straightforward. She had constructed this life piece by piece with her own effort, and unexpectedly, Aiden had re-entered it and become an integral part of its structure. One evening, just before the holidays, the house thrummed with excitement. The boys busily adorned a petite tree that Scarlett had chosen earlier that week, each one bickering over the privilege of hanging specific ornaments. Aiden settled on the floor amidst the turmoil, grinning as he wrestled with a string of lights that seemed determined to resist his efforts. Scarlett lingered in the doorway, cradling a mug in her hands, observing the unfolding scene, allowing herself to embrace its weight and warmth. Later, once the boys had drifted off to sleep and the house embraced a rare tranquility that followed a joyful day, Aiden discovered her perched on the edge of the bed she once occupied in solitude. She remained silent as he entered the room. She gazed at him, her eyes gentle yet cautious, still posing a question he had yet to fully address. He moved across the room and settled next to her, near enough to sense the warmth radiating from her skin, yet just out of reach for any contact. You needn't say a word, he remarked. However, I believe it's necessary for me to do so. She cast a glance in his direction, anticipation hanging in the air. He stated that he didn't return to mend what was already done. I am unable to do that. I've squandered an immense amount of time, and it's gone forever. However, I am present at this moment. I desire to be there for you, for them, in any way you allow me to be. Take your time. There are no timelines. Only honesty. Scarlett gazed at her hands for an extended moment before finally breaking the silence. I once envisioned this moment vividly. Regarding your return. Yet in the dream, I felt a surge of anger. I shouted. I ensured you worked for it. He offered a soft smile. That seems reasonable. But now that you're here, she continued, all I feel is exhaustion. Exhausted from carrying the weight of it all by myself. Exhausted from the fear of relying on others. There's no need for fear, he reassured. Relying on others doesn't signify weakness. It exposes my fragility. Then embrace your vulnerability, he said softly. Alongside me. She gazed at him, truly gazed at him, and recognized not the figure she had once fled from but the one who had come back and remained. The individual who intertwined strands with awkward hands, who narrated tales at dusk with an abundance of emotion, who pressed lips to scrape knees and fastened little shoes without ever seeking recognition. The man who transformed, not at her request, but because life necessitated it and he opted for growth. She extended her hand, allowing it to rest softly on his. I can't bear to face this solitude any longer, she murmured. You won't need to do that again. They refrained from kissing. Not on that particular night. It wasn't focused on that. It was in the gentle way her head settled on his shoulder moments later. His hand found hers and held on tightly. The silence that once lingered between them transformed into a serene tranquility. Time slipped away. The documentation has been completed. Aiden's name was inscribed, officially and eternally, alongside theirs. He settled into a modest home just 2 blocks down, allowing Scarlett some breathing room, yet always remaining close enough. They navigated co-parenting effortlessly, filled with warmth and laughter. And gradually, the affection that had long been hidden beneath layers of hurt and separation started to emerge once more, genuine this time, fortified by all it had endured. On a serene Sunday morning, with snow gently falling outside and the boys nestled between them on the couch, cartoons softly flickering on the screen, Scarlett turned to Aiden and perceived not the man he once was or the errors of his past. She observed the man who remained. The individual who arrived. The man who, defying all odds and weathering every storm, had returned home. For me, the conclusion of this narrative transcends mere resolution, it embodies a subtle victory of love that is deserved, not taken for granted. It tells the story of 2 individuals who, separated by fear and silence, ultimately rediscover each other through the power of presence, personal growth, and unwavering patience. The strength of this ending lies not in a flawless resolution, but in the characters' decision to embrace one another once more, carrying their scars, their past, and the burdens of their experiences. Aiden does not come back as a hero. He returns as someone ready to shed his former identity, to present himself daily not with lofty vows, but with steady reliability. Scarlett is not one to easily forgive, she fiercely guards her children, maintains her boundaries, and allows her heart to reopen only when she genuinely perceives that he has transformed. Their reunion feels justified, rooted not in nostalgia or fantasy, but in the individuals they have grown into and the commitment they are ready to embrace together. What I appreciate most is how the narrative celebrates healing, not merely as a concept, but as a tangible, everyday journey. The characters acknowledge the pain of the past without pretense. They recognize it, and they create something greater as a result. In a landscape dominated by instant solutions and shallow transformations, this conclusion stands out as truly exceptional. It has a soft touch. It has a solid foundation. And that's what renders it truly memorable.